All right, everyone, welcome back to another edition of the Feeding Frenzy, where you can expect a little bit of signal about noise that is the internet. And this week, we have some pretty interesting things to cover. First up is our podcast for the week, Noah Feldman, Deep Focus for Hyperproductivity, Learning 10 Plus Language, and Predicting the Future with History, and so much more. I actually shortened the title because it was so long that I thought it was getting a little too much. So if you want to see the full title, you have to go find and download podcasts, which I hope you do because there's a lot. But first, a little bit on Noah, and this is extremely abbreviated, but here we go. Noah Feldman is a Harvard professor, ethical philosopher, and advisor, public intellectual, religious scholar, and historian, and the author of 10 books, including his latest, The Broken Constitution, Lincoln, Slavery, and the Refounding of America. I'm going to summarize only 2 points, of which there are many more to cover in this podcast. I basically had the show notes open during this podcast so I could keep referencing and find the books and other materials they kept citing so that I could further dig. And I have no doubt that some of these articles will eventually come into the Feeding Frenzy because I just honestly haven't gotten through all of it yet. And one of the things that this podcast starts with is language. And it may seem esoteric to start there. And even for me, if this had happened a couple years ago, I would not have found it as interesting. But as someone who's finally committed to trying to learn a language the last 2 years, I found myself resonating at a high level. Overall, the languages you speak shape the way you think, and how others think as well. If you share a language with someone, you can intuit their thought process more effectively. And that's only scratching the surface about languages and the different depth they go into here. And the second idea for this conversation was around the book with Abraham Lincoln. And one of these things, and this is really paraphrasing it, but it's that Lincoln was famous for trying to compromise. And even as the Civil War ramped up, he tried to compromise with the South. And it wasn't until he realized that there was no compromising left that he pivoted and made a moral change. By moral change, he broke the Constitution and abolished slavery. As Noah says, constitutions are not moral documents, but they are informed by the moral standards of the people who support them. Even though the Constitution was written with an idea of people that is archaic and wrong to us today, it took someone to break it and reform the Constitution in a better way to encompass the moral sentiment of the people. And I'll reiterate one more time, this is just 2 very brief summaries that barely scratch the surface of the content. It was so fascinating, and I can't wait to actually read this book on the Broken Constitution because it puts so much into context, and it's just a very different way of looking at it that I would not have expected. And so with that, I hope you take something away from this conversation because it is mind-blowing, and I can't wait for round 2. Worth reading this week, I actually did some digging into Facebook's research division, or rather now Meta, but it's Inside Reality Labs Research. Meet the team that's working to bring touch to the digital world. This was so cool. This metaverse stuff is super front of brain for so many people. It's talked about everywhere. It's being bombarded us with these commercials from Facebook or Meta. And see, I'm going to keep getting it wrong. And I like to consider myself a futurist, and I don't really get lost in these names though. I've had some offline discussions with a few of my friends about metaverse. What is it? What will it be? What isn't it? Whatnot. And quite honestly, I don't have an opinion. I'm not super excited yet. I'm super down with the idea in some sense, but I'm more interested like what's going to come. What's the reality, right? So that being said, being an interest in wearables means thinking about how you can better interface with the digital world. And this haptic glove being developed by the Reality Lab is one of these really interesting projects. So this glove gives feedback to the wearer in digital space. And in the short video, you can even see 2 people playing Jenga and even a thumb war. And so the way the glove works is tiny micro actuators that look like bubble wrap, but really small, like smaller than the size of a quarter. And they're control the compressed air that basically interface with an Oculus Rift and allow you to have real haptic feedback. And by haptic, basically, is physical, like touch feedback. And it's so cool. And so for me, I think about it this way. This feels like the next logical step in getting digital spaces to feel more connected to our natural senses. For the longest time, the best inputs we've had were mouse and keyboard, and touchscreens only had wide appeal after the launch of iPhone in 2007. So the question remains, what is the next evolution? Many people would say something like this, and who knows? But I hope we keep pushing that envelope to say, where can this go? The next article is Avoiding Stupidity is Easier Than Seeking Brilliance from Farnham Street. I'll start this one with a small quote. This is a problem because we're often playing the game of the professionals. What we should do in this case, when we're the amateur, is to invert the problem. Rather than trying to win, we should avoid losing. And as always, Farnham Street comes in with bite-sized wisdom to think differently. Yes, we can learn a lot from the professional, see their example, and then invert it to be used by you as an amateur. An example from my own life, when it comes to working out, I don't aim to train like an athlete, but I adapt their tactics so that it works for me. The goal is then how to make this sustainable for the long term so that I can make consistent progress over years. Next up is worth watching. And this week we have a video essay from Thomas Flight, Chernobyl, a Masterclass in Perspective. If you've been following along with these editions over the last few weeks and months, I've been really into breaking down visual aspects of film and storytelling. We've been doing it with the C series of podcasts as we watch the show and talk about the different elements of the story. And I've also been talking about VFX shared from the Corridor crew. And because of that, the algorithm learns who you are and what you like. And so this is what you get. You get another person who does amazing breakdowns of some of the best content to watch. And so with that, if you haven't watched the short docudrama that is Chernobyl, I highly recommend you go watch that now before you watch this. So if you haven't watched it, go hit pause. I mean, I'm not spoiling anything, but don't watch the video if you haven't watched the show because it's so good. And what Chernobyl does so incredibly well is that as a historical event, some people know a little bit about something of it. Maybe it's not exactly correct, but it's close enough. It's in the ballpark. The filmmakers of this decided to focus on a very tight perspective of the events to show the chaos and the emotion, to connect you to the event, to make you see what it would have been like to be there in Chernobyl, to either experience the aftermath, experience the cleanup, or experience how to move forward. Because you don't get all of the facts and all of the more historical things that you could go find in other places. And I think that's where this blend of documentary and drama really shine. And so with that, go watch the show, watch the video, do yourself a favor. It's really worth your time. Last but not least, we will end with our quote. Today's quote is from John Kabat-Zinn. Wherever you go, there you are. And with that, everyone, that will wrap up this week's Feeding Frenzy. I hope you took something away that you're going to sit with for this week, or at least explore on your own time. And as always, I'd love to hear what you have been exploring in your weeks, and it could be related to anything I've shared here, and it may be added in a Feeding Frenzy in the future, and maybe talked about on a podcast. I don't know, but in any case, it doesn't need to be related to anything here. So go ahead, leave a comment. What do you have going on? Bounce it around your brain. And we'd love to hear it, especially books, podcasts, all of the above. No topic or stone unturned. And as always, you can find more things from Feeding Curiosity over on our website at feedingcuriosity.net. And you can find our podcast, our blogs, and other editions of the Feeding Frenzy. Do the thing, and I will see you all in the next edition.